I'm using is a lot more limited, so sometimes I have to think creatively. You know, if a character, like in the last session we did this Dory. Dory in the reference image has like 3 different shades of blue at least, but you know, you have to kind of figure out the difference between contrast and highlights in that with different colors. So it makes you think outside the box a little bit. We're gonna start this Judy Hopps here. Before I start this, little mental note, this character has huge ears. So I want to maybe make her eyes a little smaller than I would normally, just because everything wants to be proportional, so that I don't end up having ears out to here, you know, because then, you know, you run out of batter, it's a big mess, and you can't flip it. So we're going to make her eyes a little bit smaller than I normally do, so that I have enough room for all those other interesting details. Because whatever detail you start with, however big you make it, you're usually going to have to make everything else in proportion to that. Learned that the hard way so many times. You know, I'll spend like 3 minutes drawing a really amazing set of eyes on some character, and then as soon as I get to the next step, I'm like, uh-oh, I made this way too big. So while I'm drawing this, does anybody have any questions? You can just, like, if you're up here, you can just ask me something, because I'm staring at the griddle here, and I mean, I'm pretty good about interacting with folks.
I can feel them if you...
Yes, he can also talk. Lee has a voice today.
So happy. What's your question?
In those colored containers, is that also pancake mix, or is that just color?
The colored containers here?
Yeah.
They're all pancake mix, and they all have the icing gel, which if you've ever...
make it thin?
Yeah. Well, it's not to make it thin, it's just to color it. In fact, that's why we use the icing gels, is you can use a lot less and still get really rich, vibrant colors out of it. But if you've ever had a cupcake that's colored, it's icing gel. It's a little bit more dense, so you can use less. And then you just gotta be careful with how much you use. If you're trying to get a really light color, you're gonna use a very little bit. Because like I said, it's really contrast.
I do have another question. How long can you keep it in those containers?
How long can you keep it in the...
Like once you've mixed, you're saying once you've mixed the batter, how long does it last?
Yeah.
I personally, just artistically, I try to only use batter I've made at least on the same day, even if I put it in the fridge. It's not like the batter goes bad, but the colors themselves start to lose a little bit of their fidelity after more than 24 hours of not being used. So, I mean, just, especially when I'm doing events or doing demonstrations, I always mix fresh before it. But I mean, once you mix it, it should be good for the whole day. That's been my experience, at least. Let's see here.
Anybody else curious about anything?
So here's actually an interesting teaching moment. I was talking about how, since I'm limited, I have to think a little differently because I don't have as many shades of colors with this palette. She doesn't actually have like bright white circles around her eyes. She has light gray circles around her eyes, but there's contrast between the rest of her fur and the circles around her eyes. So I'm going to use my light batter to create that contrast, and hopefully it'll look okay. You get kind of the same thing on Stitch. What's up?
I have faith in you.
What'd you say?
I have faith in you.
Oh, you have faith in me. You're whispering.
And what was your question?
That's a great question. She asked, how do I know how long, like how do I control the temperature and that sort of thing? How do I know how long before it burns and they all turn brown? And it's a great question. You can't tell how brown the other side is until it's flipped over, right? For me, it's always been trial and error, but the lower the temperature you cook it on, the more time you have. And in fact, the reason when I did the really fancy one, it's on, but it's so low. If you're below like 150 degrees, it's literally not hot enough to burn it. So you can take all day long on a single pancake, and when you flip it over, as long as you don't cook it hotter than 250 degrees for too long, it should still have all of its consistency, or its colors. At this temperature, like between 200 and 250, I usually have about 10 minutes before it really starts losing its contrast. But even then, it's still like 10 or 15 before it actually technically burns. By cooking on lower temperature, you have a lot more time to make mistakes and to draw details, and that's where, it's that way. If you manage the temperature well, you never really have to rush. You can take as long as you'd like.
And then what was your other question?
How long have I been doing this for? Fantastic question. I got started as a pancake artist, dabbling in the medium about 7.5, 8 years ago. I was fresh out of high school, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I got a job at a little diner in South St. Louis, little greasy spoon joint, seated about 20 people, it was super tiny, and I was just a fry cook. And I noticed that folks on the morning shift would do like Mickey Mouse ears, the classic dollops, and they would serve that out. Even if they had a griddle full of food, they'd throw those on there, and I was like, oh, why do you guys do that? And they were like, well, it makes people's day, and if you make their day, they'll give you a better tip. And I was like, that's... But then I thought, oh wait, so it doesn't have to be a circle. Because I never really cooked before. I didn't really think, it occurred to me that any shape you cook on the griddle, it'll hold that shape. You could do a line and it'll be a line. And I thought, okay, so maybe you could do something else with that. So I got the idea to start doing smiley faces, sort of Mr. Potato Head style, where you do the round pancake and the smile and the eyes and you stack it all on top. And I told myself, all right, the next person that comes in and orders a pancake, I'm gonna make some goofy smiley face. Naturally, it was 3 a.m. on a graveyard shift, and the next person that came in and ordered pancakes looked very angry and had gold teeth and face tattoos and looked like he was about as likely to strangle me with the pancake as he was to eat it. But I had promised myself, next person gets one, and I thought, all right, let's try this out. And I'll never forget the way I made this smiley face for him, and I slid it in front of him, and he saw it, and he said, that's amazing. He gave me a $15 tip. And I thought, all right, we're 1 for 1. Let's keep doing that. I'm going to continue the story after I flip this here Judy Hopps. You ready, guys? Let's see if I did it okay. Oh, cutie. Happy with that one. If I didn't say it before, guys, if I make your request, hang